Meeting to order at 9:01. Effective March 27th, 2020, the Mendocino County Planning Commission meetings will be conducted virtually and not available for in-person public participation pursuant to State Executive Order number N29-20. Meetings are live streamed and available for viewing on the Mendocino County YouTube page at https://www.youtube.com/Mendocino County Video. In order to minimize the risk of exposure during this time of emergency, the public may participate digitally in meetings by sending comments to pbscommissions@mendocinocounty.org in lieu of personal attendance. All public comment will be made immediately available to the commissioners, staff, and the general public as they are received and processed by staff, and can be viewed as attachments to this meeting agenda at the Planning Commission agenda page. Requests for telecomment are required to be submitted prior to 7 a.m. the morning of the meeting. If you requested to speak under public expression, please call in now. We thank you for your understanding during this difficult time, and thank you for your continued interest.
And pardon me, Marilyn, we missed on our audio here your official call to order. So if you could just repeat that you are officially calling the meeting to order here.
Yes, calling the meeting to order at 9:01 a.m.
Thank you.
Then could we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Wiedemann, Commissioner Jacobson,
Present.
Commissioner Holkamp,
Present.
Commissioner Purnell, Commissioner Nelson,
Here.
Chair Ogle.
Present. Do we know if Commissioner Wiedemann, Commissioner Perkins, I don't believe he was called, was he?
He made prior arrangements that he was not going to be here today.
Okay, and how about Commissioner Wiedemann and Purnell?
Wiedemann, I don't know. She was on earlier, and then now she's not on the screen anymore, so I'm not sure what's going on. And then Commissioner Purnell called me yesterday and wanted to know if we had a quorum. So I really didn't know. So I'm assuming she's not going to come because she's tied up at work.
Okay, so I believe we have only 4 commissioners out of the 7. Is that correct?
Yes.
So you get it.
And that does constitute a quorum. Okay, then we'll go on to agenda item number 3, the director's report. Do we have a director's report today?
Yes, Chair Ogle, Brent Schultz, and commission members, Planning and Building Services Director. I just wanted to let the commission know that Julie and I presented a board item on Tuesday for redirection of the cannabis cultivation ordinance. And we had about 4 recommendations in our report. You may have seen it, and it was for development of what's known as phase 3 to the ordinance, which is to go to a full discretionary land use based ordinance. And we asked for direction to start preparing that ordinance, and we got direction to prepare that ordinance. So when that's done, that has to come back through to the Planning Commission and then on to the board. That's a time-sensitive ordinance. We have to have it done, Julia, by April 25th. Is that correct?
April 2021 is right now when we have our phase 3 start date set for.
So if we don't have the ordinance done by then the old ordinance becomes effective. However, we're going to work hard to get this ordinance done before that time frame so it goes into effect. We did not get direction on the zoning table. Hopefully we'll get that soon from the board and we can include that in the ordinance. I want to let you know, we're going to be, Julie and I will be working with 2 ad hocs to work on 2 different areas. One, the ordinance with Supervisor McCowan, and then there's a CDFA, Food and Ag, CEQA checklist that's been worked on for about a year. We just got it in June And the board members, Hashik and Williams, are on an ad hoc, and they are going to be working with us on that, as well as a pilot. We call it a pilot program. We've been working with Fish and Wildlife on the sensitive species review that is in the 10A17 cultivation ordinance to help people through that process. So anyway, that's the update, though I'm sure there'll be more to come in the future on that, and we'll keep you up to date. And I think, Julia, is there anything else?
We're available for questions.
And that concludes my presentation.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the director?
Just the one. Are they looking at Fish and Game? Are they looking at doing something watershed by watershed to kind of limit some of the expense for individual households?
I don't understand the question.
Well, whatever assessments need to be done, I've always thought the smart thing would be to go down some creek, do the whole thing and let everybody share the cost instead of each individual parcel having to do the same thing.
Well, and I think, that's a little bit outside of our typical scope. I haven't heard anything in terms of a change at the Fish and Wildlife level, but it's a good question, and maybe something we can think about having, discussion about water and water usage within the county and resources, and possibly having some resource agencies come in for a planning commission meeting in the future, something like that.
Thank you.
And I have to agree. I have to say I agree with Madeline. I've felt this all along, a concern about the fees for the Fish and Wildlife that so many applicants have to pay. And I really would like to have someone from Fish and Wildlife come in and speak to our commission. So thank you, Madeline, for bringing that up. Any other questions for the director? Okay, seeing none, we'll go on to agenda item number 4, matters from the public. This is public expression time. The Planning Commission welcomes participation in commission meetings. This item is limited to matters under the jurisdiction of the commission that are not on the posted agenda and items which have not already been considered by the commission. No action will be taken. Individuals wishing to address a commission under public expression are welcome to do so via email in lieu of personal attendance at pbscommissions@mendocinocounty.org. All correspondence will be made available to the Planning Commission agenda page. To submit comments via telecomment, a request form must have been received by 7 a.m. the morning of the meeting. Do we have any requests for telecomment under public expression?
I have received no telecomment for the public expression.
Yeah, no requests for telecomment under public expression at this time.
Okay, thank you, Jim and Julia. Then we'll go on to agenda item number 5, consent calendar, which there are none. And so we'll go on with the agenda items under the regular calendar. And I know there will be quite a bit of discussion on the first 2 items that are listed. That's case R2019-0009 with the applicant or owner being Stephen and Shannon Collins, as well as the next item 6B, R2019-0011 for Stephen Thatcher. However, I believe agenda item number 6C on the regular calendar, the applicant being Combs Tree Farm Incorporated, will be able to be expedited in comparison to the other 2. So I would like to bring agenda item 6C on the regular calendar, case R2019-0015 for Combs Tree Farm as the first item on the agenda.
Do you need a motion for that or something?
I don't believe so, do I?
No, you do not need a motion for that.
Then, let's see. It looks on mine like we go to the public. Don't go to the public hearing first, do we?
Well, we could go ahead and open the public hearing now on the item if you'd like, and then we'd go through staff's presentation first. And I do believe we have the applicant or agent as well on the line, as I do see a hand raised as well.
Okay, thank you. Then we'll go ahead with the public hearing, opening it first, or, I'm sorry, Julia, or did you say the applicant first?
You can open it at any time, so we could go ahead and open it now and then continue on with staff presentation.
So we'll open the public hearing at this point. Okay, is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak?
So Marilyn, actually, we're going to start here with the staff presentation. So if you don't mind, we'll have Keith Gronendijk go through his presentation here before we then hear from the applicant and then go on to the public comment portion.
Okay.
Oh, and it does appear we have Commissioner Wiedemann has just come onto the line here. So we'll just note for the record that we did just have Commissioner Wiedemann arrive for this particular item. So Commissioner Wiedemann, we are looking at item 6C here to begin with. We're starting with the Coombs Tree Farm rezone, R 2019-0015. So with that, I think Keith, go ahead and give your presentation.
Good morning, Commissioners. Keith Gronendijk, planner with the Mendocino County Planning Department. This is a request to rezone 2 parcels totaling 33.79 acres from rural community to limited industrial to facilitate a proposed use of the site for cannabis cultivation. The location is in the unincorporated community of Piercy, lying on the south side of Road 442B, adjacent to its intersection with State Highway 271, located Do I need to go over again?
Yeah, go ahead
Oh.
and start that again.
Oh.
Sorry, we just were muted there partway through.
Okay, so it's a rezone of 2 parcels totaling 33.79 acres from rural community to limited industrial to facilitate a proposed use of the site for cannabis cultivation. The location is in the unincorporated community of Piercy, lying on the south side of Road 442B, adjacent to its intersection with State Highway 271, located at 8300 and 8160 Road 442B in Piercy. The total acreage is 33.79 acres. And the Coombs Tree Farm is only requesting a change in zoning of the property from rural community to industrial, which has been the traditional use of the property. From the 1940s to the 1970s, the property was a sawmill site. During the 1970s and 1980s, the site was used for fabrication, a fabrication shop for welding aluminum boats, and a firewood processing plant. During the 1990s and 2000s, the site was used again as a sawmill site. In 2017 and 2018, the site was used by Caltrans for the disposal of approximately 50,000 cubic yards of slide material. Most recently, a redwood resaw mill has been installed on the site for the manufacturing of lumber. The site is currently assessed and taxed as an industrial site. Better alignment needs to be made for the zoning and the assessed designation. In 2018, the property owner applied for a cannabis cultivation permit in order to allow the indoor cultivation of a maximum of 2,500 square feet of marijuana. The parcels are not within a water district, with the applicant stating that potable water is currently being provided to the front parcel adjacent to Road 442B, and an on-site septic tank for sewage processing is also located on the same parcel as the spring. Under the current general plan designation of RC 40K, living and industrial is listed as consistent zoning designation. As such, a general plan amendment is not necessary to be done concurrently with this application. It can be anticipated that along with the cannabis cultivation on the property, The existing use of the site as a resaw mill will continue on the property that is developed, but with the rezone to limited industrial, the property owner has more latitude to change the existing sawmill business to another use that has historically been on the site and which all have been industrial in nature. While this application to rezone 2 properties could be considered a spot zoning, as no other parcels in the vicinity are within the industrial zoning district, the current use of the property as a resaw mill would not be allowed under the rural community zoning designation. Also, previous uses, both proposed and instituted, were also industrially oriented. As such, staff feels that the historic uses, along with its present use, have all been industrially oriented. And as such, this rezone application should be recommended for approval. Staff completed an initial study for the project and finds that the project as proposed has a less than significant impact on the environment and thus recommends a adoption of a negative declaration. The recommendation by staff is that the Planning Commission recommend approval of this. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission recommend approval of this project to the Board of Supervisors. There was one late comment from CAL FIRE, which said if the project area is located on timberland requiring timber operations for the cutting and removal of timber, or if project design requires the removal of commercial tree species and those species will be utilized for commercial purposes, then a permit must be obtained from CAL FIRE prior to the commencement of operations. But that's not the case on this property, so we would not recommend any additional conditions be applied to the project. That concludes my presentation.
And then I would like for the commission here, we do have just one minor revision I want to make here to the resolution. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here and show here to the commissioners. So this is just to clarify in the now therefore be it resolved clause that this is the report and recommendation to the Board of Supervisors on the project and the negative declaration, rather than making our the Planning Commission basically approving the project and making those findings. You're really providing a recommendation today. So this is a minor revision to the resolution. Everything else within the resolution would remain as written. And that concludes staff comments.
Okay, thank you, Keith and Julia. And do we have any questions for staff from any of the commissioners? I think Commissioner Wiedemann is offline again. Okay, so then we'll go on and hear from the applicant or the agent, and please state your name.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Very good. This is Bart Coombs, Coombs Tree Farms. I'm available for any questions you may have.
Any questions for Mr. Coombs?
No.
Well, that makes my job easy. So, yes, did you have a question?
No, I don't believe there were any questions. Thank you.
The fellow is on mute.
Marilyn, I do see that Diana Wiedemann has her hand up here, it looks like, to provide a comment. So just looks like she's just unmuting here. There we go.
Thank you. I had a question for staff when it's time. I know it passed and I'm having a little problem with my Zoom this morning. So Marilyn, when I can ask a couple questions with staff, that'd be great.
Just go ahead.
Okay. My question is really not the top parcel, it's the lower parcel that crosses the South Fork of the Eel. And because of that, I have, I have some reservations on the lower parcel, not the upper parcel. And to change this, to to approve this. And my issue is when I look at staff report, it talks about these less than significant impacts around hydrology and water quality. And my concern really is I think I want more information about that parcel and its contiguous nature crossing the South Fork of the Eel. So can staff talk about their findings a little more on the hydrology and water quality and the possible, my concern is I'm trying to protect the river here. So with a use that would be contextual.
Sure, I can help to describe some, at least. One thing about the industrial zoning district is that with any industrial zoned parcels, there is the requirement that even if you have a type of development that's principally permitted in that district, you may be required to go through what's called development review, which is basically where we look at if there is the potential for environmental impacts related to one of those industrial uses that's allowed by right. There's a procedure where we essentially perform an additional analysis, a CEQA checklist, again, an environmental review checklist to ensure whether or not there's any impacts. If there are impacts that need to be mitigated, then we continue forward and we actually end up working with the applicant and preparing a staff report, preparing those mitigations, and those become enforceable related to those principally permitted uses. So there also, of course, with any rezone, we don't negate any requirements of any other jurisdiction or agency with jurisdiction over the project, such as Fish and Wildlife or State Water Resources Control Board. And the owner would have to ensure that all operations are in conformance with all agencies with jurisdiction over the site. And I don't know if, Keith, you have anything additional you want to add to that, but.
Just that the floodplain is prevalent in that area, which prohibits a lot of development in the floodplain.
Yeah, and the flood zones are administered through our office as well. So there is a strict prohibition on work within those flood zones. So I think it would provide a certain level of protection, the fact that this is a flood hazard area in terms of future development. And then, as I said before, with industrial uses, there is this additional process called development review that does require those more intensive ones to go through additional environmental analysis.
Okay. Yes, so I hear that, but here's the issue for me. When these things get put out to lead agencies like Fish and Wildlife, and there's no comment, and this property crosses the South Fork of the Eel, I find that to be problematic from a planning standpoint, that there's what's going on with Fish and Wildlife, so to speak. There needs to be a comment on this. And then above that on page 4, there's no impact. Well, the proposed zoning is not located near any sensitive habitat. Well, I think the South Fork of the Eel is a sensitive habitat. So I just find there's, how do I want to say? Sometimes these reports have, from my point of view, a lack of environmental, addressing the environmental impacts. And that could possibly happen. And I understand what you're saying. Well, the next question I have is there any water extraction currently taking place from the South Fork of the Eel on that property?
So I would like to point out this is a rezone request in front of us. So really the extraction of water is not a pertinent aspect to this request right now. I'm sure the applicant or the owner could be able to answer any sort of improvements they currently have on the site, but it's really, this rezone request is solely looking at changing this zoning district and not about allowing physical improvements as a result of this.
Right, but
if I may. Oh.
Go ahead.
Yeah, a couple things. No, there's no water extraction on the property. There is a spring across the freeway that we get our potable water from. And with regards to the lack of comment from Fish and Game and other agencies, this was reviewed when Caltrans disposed of the 50,000 cubic yards of slide material. It went up to the lower parcel is developed up to a point. That's where Caltrans deposited their slide material. It was reviewed by Fish and Game. It was permitted by Water Resources. The slide material was deposited there, and erosion measures were taken. Silt was controlled. That was all done by Caltrans. We have no intention of developing beyond the developed limits of the property. I would imagine that the reason there's a lack of comment is that they are reviewed Fish and Wildlife and Water Resources, the property for that Caltrans permit.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So Diana, does that, are you comfortable with the response to your questions? More or less?
Right. I guess the question for me is, you know, I understand this is a zoning request only to the planning department. I get the zone, that part, but once we change that zoning request, it opens it up to a whole nother, you know, yes, I understand the use was a sawmill and had a lot of use in the past. I'm just looking at, you know, the future and crossing with the lower parcel, the river with an industrial zoning. That's just my concern. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you, Diana. Are there any other questions or comments from the other commissioners? Yes, Madeline.
I just wanted to confirm with Mr. Coombs that he was not thinking of expanding the development footprint. I'm on that property. I'm pretty familiar with that property. And as long as he's going to stay on the same footprint or close to it, not hugely expanded, I would not be so worried about the floodway areas.
We have no intention of expanding the footprint, and I believe that if for some reason that we wanted to expand towards the river, there would be a whole additional Fish and Game or Fish and Wildlife and water quality and all that. We have no intention of doing that at all. So
Thank you.
yeah.
Any other questions for the applicant? Okay. Seeing none, we can go ahead and open the public hearing. Do we have any comments that have come in from the public?
So I believe there was just did you mention one additional comment letter that's come in at all? I'm sorry, we've had a couple comment letters come in this morning. So let me take a look here real quick. It does not appear we have any comment for this item, and we have no request for telecomment on this item.
So we do not need to take a break, is that correct?
That is correct.
Just the fire.
Okay, I do have one comment regarding the report. I think Judy, you and I discussed it last night on page 17 of the report.
Yes, thank you, Marilyn. So yes, what we talked about was on the initial study, page 17 of that. In the very last sentence of the mandatory findings of significance, where it says less than significant, it should read, the last sentence should read, these issues have been taken into consideration and it has been determined that the cumulative effects from the proposed, currently it says subdivision, we would replace that with the word rezoning, will have a less than significant impact on local residents and the environment.
Good catch.
Thank you. Okay, and I don't believe I closed the public hearing, so the public hearing is now closed. Any discussion for commission members? Oops, yes, go ahead, Diana.
Yes, I just want to say, since you're not going to develop the lower parcel or add to it, why do we need to do a zoning change there? Why can't we just make the zoning proposal change for the upper parcel?
Because we are using a portion of that lower parcel. A portion of that lower parcel is developed, and we would like to use that. And to me, it makes sense to have the same zoning over the entire over the entire parcel.
If I may, I would want to point to the commissioners that there is the topographic map that's in your attachments. It's attachment B. I think actually is a pretty good representation of showing sort of the topography of the site and sort of this defined area where Mr. Coombs, the sort of existing development is and where it's the logical development to occur. And then you start seeing this steep drop down towards the creek. So that really sort of shows you the extent, I believe, of where Mr. Coombs would potentially be working on that secondary parcel that's closest to the river.
It's a pretty steep bluff, and it's about 300 feet down to the South Fork. So it's, you can't do much anything. You can't do anything there.
Thank you. That's helpful.
This is Randy Jacobson. I just had a comment. I agree with staff on this, and that it's just important that we remember that all we're doing is recommending or evaluating a change in zoning. And once a applicant decides on a project, then we'll have that opportunity to evaluate the site as to its impact on the property. And so in this case, I feel that change in zoning is not going, just with a change in zoning, is not going to impact the environmental issues that we're talking about here. We need to go ahead with the approval on this.
Thank you, Randy. Any other comments from the commissioners or questions? Okay, seeing none, then do we have a motion?
I don't think Scott's here.
Correct. Would one of the other commissioners like to make a motion?
I will so move with the amended amendments offered at this meeting.
Do you need to read the motion, Madeline? What page is that on?
I make the recommended motion to the Board of Supervisors to adopt a negative declaration and grant rezone R 2019-0015 for the project as proposed by the applicant based on the facts and findings, and the resolution as amended at the meeting.
I would second that.
That was Jacobson.
Second, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Thank you. Commissioner Jacobson,
Yes.
Commissioner Holtkamp,
Yes.
Commissioner Wiedemann,
Yes.
Commissioner Nelson,
Yes.
Chair Ogle.
That was a yes.
Thank you.
Yes. So with that, that motion carries with a 5 votes in approval there. So thank you.
Thank you. And I would like to say one thing, just to Commissioner, to Randy, that a zoning change does affect land use, as you know, and it opens up uses. So I don't think that doing a classification of a zoning change I disagree with your explanation is what I'm saying. So
Okay.
I just wanted to be clear on that.
And
Because-
if I may, for the benefit of the commission, I'll just describe to you what staff looks at when we do one of these rezoning requests. So we do look at the difference in allowable uses that would be coming forward as a result of the rezoning request and base our environmental analysis upon that. So we really do have to look at what is this potential future development that could be accommodated on the site as a result of the change to that district. But in this instance with industrial zoning as well, we also look at the additional protections offered by the development review process, as well as just the general topographic and site constraints of this site. So if that helps for the commission for when we're looking at these rezoning requests going forward, that's really what we look at.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Then I believe we are ready to go on to case R 20190009 for Stephen and Shannon Collins. That's a request to rezone and create a cannabis accommodation combining district to facilitate greater flexibility in the development standards related to cannabis cultivation for existing commercial cannabis cultivation sites and suspend the sunset provision for residential districts to facilitate continued operation. Do we have a staff report?
Yes, we do. So we have Siobhan Holmes here. I'm going to let her go ahead and take it away. Now, I do want to just note that for this item and the next item, these are very similar requests. These are both cannabis accommodation districts. So what I'd first like to do with the permission of the commission here is to have Siobhan just briefly run over what these CA combining districts are and give you a little bit of information on that before we deep dive into each specific application. So unless I hear an objection to that, I'd want to turn this over to Siobhan and allow her to just give you a little introduction to the CA combining districts, and then we can go into this specific item, the 2019-9. Excellent. Okay, so go ahead.
Good morning, commissioners. So we start from the beginning in April of 2017. As we all recall, the Board of Supervisors adopted Ordinance 4381 to essentially create the cannabis framework. After a very trying year in 2017, the board started to recognize that the development requirements for some of the smaller sites were too constraining. And the board sought out additional suggestions from staff. How do we make this better? In the end, near October 2018, after a lot of deliberation and consideration, Michael Baker came to the Planning Commission and discussed the potential for the cannabis accommodation districts as well as the cannabis prohibition districts. At that point, there were several neighborhoods that were recommended to become prohibition districts and others to become accommodation districts. Generally speaking, the accommodation districts provide eligible people within the boundaries of the districts the ability to apply for a cannabis cultivation application, and if they are issued that permit, they can cultivate with reduced setbacks to property boundaries. That is essentially what you get with the cannabis accommodation districts. Page 3 of the staff report for R_20190009 really highlights how an accommodation district can be created, how long it lasts, and the way in which they're regulated. Staff would like to point out that every single property in an approved accommodation district is capped at 2,500 square feet of cannabis. Therefore, there are no producers within approved districts growing at the size 1 or 2, which are the larger permits within the county. So to be clear, it only allows an applicant to apply for a cultivation permit at 2,500 square feet of canopy. And if they're awarded that permit, they can cultivate up to 20 feet to the property boundary. Now, at the same time, the Board of Supervisors created the accommodation and prohibition districts. They also allowed for additional reductions in setbacks, including within accommodation districts, through an administrative permit. Additionally, in order for staff to recommend approval for a cannabis accommodation district, the applicant must demonstrate at least 60% of property ownership approval within the district. Now that we've kind of reminded ourselves of how we got to this point, I'd like to move into specifically the rezone request R2019-0009. This application proposes to create a cannabis accommodation combining district, or alternatively referred to as a cannabis accommodation overlay. As explained in Chapter 10A17 of the Mendocino County Code, the sunset provision requires legal parcels and zoning districts, primarily residential in use and less than 2 acres in size, cease cultivation activities unless a cannabis accommodation combining district is created. The applicant for this rezone seeks to develop an accommodation combining district of 14 contiguous parcels in order to continue permitted and licensed cultivation activities on their site, as well as help other farmers and neighbors recover from the catastrophic Redwood Valley fire of 2017. As provided in the applicant's statement, most of the sunset farms around me are already established, not needing to or having the room to expand in our little area. Allowing us to continue to cultivate will allow some in the CA district to rebuild their lives and feel normal again. To do so, the applicant provided a petition of property owners within the proposed district, which includes 13 of 14 owner signatures, or 93% approval to create the district. The proposed district consists of approximately 27 acres of land zone rural residential. If approved, the new district would be the 5th cannabis accommodation combining district approved by the county. Review of the proposed project under the California Environmental Quality Act determined that an addendum to the adopted mitigated negative declaration best analyzed potential environmental impacts as a result of this application. The addendum is attached as Exhibit B of the resolution. The proposed rezone is consistent with the rural residential general plan land use and zoning designations, as well as Mendocino County Code Chapter 20.118. I'd like to take this opportunity to correct a few errors in the item's documents. First, the third paragraph on page 2 of the staff report inaccurately reports the action which allowed for this application to be submitted. Staff will update the document to reflect that the Board of Supervisors adopted ordinance number 4420, December 4th, 2018, rather than resolution number 18-076 on May 22nd, 2018. Next, the final paragraph of the site characteristics on page 4 of the staff report mistakenly lists West Road as CF237, which should read CR237, denoting that it is a county road. Also, I noticed on the maps, the name of the applicant says Alan McGinty, but his name is Dylan McGinty, who is now also the property owner. With that, staff recommends that the Planning Commission recommend to the Board of Supervisors to adopt an addendum to the mitigated negative declaration and approve the rezone request to create a cannabis accommodation combining district R_2019-0009, the West Road Redwood Valley CA district. I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you, Siobhan. Questions for staff? Go ahead.
So my first question is on attachment C. It shows the parcels that are in the the district. It seems as if only 2 of them, if I understand the C correct, are cannabis growers, and then the 3rd cannabis grower is not in the district. So I'm just curious to know why there aren't more cannabis growers in the district.
Sure. That I will provide a little bit of information that question might also be best answered by the applicant. What I can tell you is there's no purpose in having your parcel in an accommodation district if you have more than 2 acres. So what we're looking at, more than likely, several of the surrounding parcels are of the size that they are not going to sunset. Furthermore, the 2 sites that you see within the district mean that those property owners, or rather cultivators, sought licensing before the county stopped accepting applications. Please remember, approval of the accommodation district will allow all eligible properties within the district 180 days to apply for a cultivation permit. Long story short, these 2 dots within the proposed district have already applied and or been issued.
Okay, it sounds like maybe it's a matter of timing. The other question I have is on the reduction of the setback. Is that true where a district owner is next to a non-district owner? Is the setback only between the district owners, or does it mean there's a setback from parcels that are outside the district?
I would have to double check the zoning code, but I do believe that we do not make a distinction between who owns said property line.
I believe you're correct.
So, my concern is if you have a person that's not in the district, are they going to be subject to, for instance, odors because of the reduction of the setback?
Could you repeat your question one more time, please?
So I don't see where there's any difficulty or any problem with the setback between cannabis growers or between owners within the district. But for owners outside the district, I'm concerned about reducing the setback.
I understand. I believe at that point, that would be taken up by the cannabis division, because that would not be an issue until the person was actually issued a permit to cultivate. So they would have to have their proposed garden approved by the cannabis division as well. And so I'm not sure of how cannabis would go about that if a neighbor adjacent to a CA district didn't like how the cultivator was closer than 50 feet. I'm not sure how cannabis would deal with that.
And if I may just add, so within the zoning chapter 20.118, there is a section here that talks about when you have a setback for a cultivation site from an adjoining legal parcel under separate ownership. It doesn't even distinguish if you're outside the district or not at this one. It says that you can reduce the setback down to 20 feet, or it can be waived with the approval of an administrative permit. So there is this administrative permit process that looks at these reductions on each application. So when you have a cannabis cultivation proposed, an administrative permit is often required if you're looking to reduce your setbacks. And with that, then we're looking at it gives the opportunity for the public, the adjacent landowners to comment on that as well, and really provides that forum for more community input on it.
Well, if I understand correctly, then the 20-foot reduction or the reduction of the setback applies to all borders, regardless of whether you're the adjacent owner is in the district or not in the district. Am I correct?
When you say borders, I would only rephrase that as property boundaries. And yes, if all parcels within an approved cannabis accommodation district, the setback for the cultivation site to the property boundary is 20 feet as the minimum.
All right, thank you.
I'd like to make a comment here. However, that could be reduced even more with an administrative permit. Is that correct?
Correct.
Wow. Wow.
While we're
Sheesh.
on that, I'd like to ask another question regarding establishing additional cannabis grows within the CA district. I thought I understood the only approved ones would be those that were, what was the date on that? Those that were already established prior to, what was it, April of, or I don't know,
January
the
1,
month, 2016?
January
correct?
1, 2016. Correct. So if the district is approved, each individual cultivator must demonstrate proof of prior cultivation as an eligibility requirement to submit an application to cannabis.
So can I ask a question with that? Commissioner Wiedemann here. If I live in that district and I am surrounded by cultivators, cannabis cultivators on either side of me, but I never grew, at this point, I still can never grow, but I'm going to be impacted by the cannabis growers. Is that correct?
Thank you for that question. That's a very good question. The first thing I would point out, if you are adjacent to two properties within the proposed district, it is highly probable that the applicant sought your approval for the purposes of submitting the application.
Yes.
First. Second, that is correct. If you are ineligible to earn a cultivation permit based on the requirements outlined in 10A17 of Mendocino County Code, you more than likely would not be awarded a cultivation permit. Again, staff does not accept applications for cultivation permits.
Okay.
If that changed, I would take back that statement.
Okay, so in that case, let me just follow my line of thinking here. So in that case, I'm one of the property owners, and on either side of me, they are cultivators of marijuana. And I cannot grow because I never grew. Now, that means, can I sell my property to the cannabis person that would allow that person to grow on to expand their operation to my property? What I'm trying to do is protect property rights, so to speak.
I understand, Commissioner Wiedemann. So there are a few things there. Please also recall that Chapter 10A17 requires that the legal parcel existed before January 1, 2016 as well. Number two, all parcels within a CA district can only grow 2,500 square feet of canopy, meaning no configuration, no rezone, no boundary line adjustment would ever get you a larger permit, as the regs are written right now.
That answers that. Thank you.
Sure.
I just had a question, a follow-up question on that. If the individual that was growing and had been growing prior to 2016 purchased the property next door, would they be allowed to grow on the parcel? Does it go with the parcel or does it go with the landowner as far as history, as far as where they grew?
We are so lucky today that I formerly worked in the ag department, because I can answer a lot of these questions, because frankly, these are not our questions. But I understand where you're going, and the answer is no. Because remember what proof of prior is. Proof of prior is a demonstration that the applicant grew the cannabis that they are showing at that location. Okay. Relocation applications are a thing of the past. And so you're not going to relocate into a CA district. We are quite tight here. I think it may be helpful for the commission to speak with the applicant, because Dylan can really provide you with a lot of the information you're seeking.
Okay.
And just to note, we do have the applicant is available today. I see he is on the line here, but of course, we're happy to answer any more questions from the commissioners before we move on to the applicant's portion.
So I have one more before we leave with staff. So back to Commissioner Nelson's question on the 20-foot setbacks, right? And I understand the concern is that what we're dealing with is impact to neighbors, right? Honestly, I think that's the issue as far as smell, and that's what we find, that what we hear complaints about. So the question is, when you say, well, through an administrative process, if you're saying you could reduce that, is there a way we could, or is it already said and done? Is there a way that we could say any of the outside boundaries, meaning the outside parcels of this map, cannot be reduced? In other words, the parcels on the out perimeter cannot be reduced. Their perimeter boundary property line cannot be reduced less than 20 feet. Can we add that?
You know, I would want to, I'm trying to confer here. It's always challenging over Zoom. I would want to come back to that question after we go through a little bit more discussion here. I'd like a chance to connect with Deputy County Counsel on that outside of the meeting to talk about it. Traditionally, we would typically see, if this was something that the commission wanted to see for all CA districts, that would be something that would have had to be part of the ordinance itself. But as always with rezones, there is the ability to apply conditions in the lens of a contract rezone. However, staff has not evaluated this in terms of a contract rezone at this point. So I would be a little hesitant to make that jump to there without thinking through it a little bit further.
Yeah, thank you.
Siobhan, Staff Planner Siobhan Holmes. I would also like to add the 2 applications before you today for the accommodation districts are the only applications the county has received and will receive, because the deadline to apply for CA districts has now passed. So we would not have an opportunity to see any new projects come before the commission unless the Board of Supervisors made some changes.
So can I get a clarification? Am I correct in understanding that currently, before the district is formed, the setback is 50 feet? If the district is formed, then it's reduced to 20 feet.
Unless the applicant has submitted an administrative permit for a setback reduction, because those are available regardless of where your cultivation site is, inside or outside of a CA district. So I believe, yes, the current setback is 50 feet. We would have to check that though, because that is, I believe the current setback to the property boundary is 50 feet.
Under the current, yeah, I think we've hit that threshold where it's been reduced to that.
But some applicants outside of CA districts do submit administrative permit applications for setback reductions.
Thank you.
Questions from the commissioners or staff? Siobhan, you seem, I have numerous questions, and obviously you have a lot of history in this, so I'm sure you'll be able to answer these pretty easily. My first question is, what is the date of the sunset provision for residential districts?
I believe that was,
I'm scrambling looking through the code section right here, so just bear with me.
Chair Ogle, the reason it takes a moment for us to consider this, you may recall that the Board of Supervisors took an action to extend sunset provisions depending on whether or not they had initiated their applications. And so we are double checking that. Would you go to your next question while Julia's double checking that, please?
Certainly. How many years are required prior to existence? Oh, sorry, you answered that. It's January of 2016. And how many properties in the CA district must have been in existence prior to January 16? Just one?
So I would reframe that. The initial application can be submitted by anyone, because recall, all you do is create the zone. You still need to go through the cultivation process. That is where there's an eligibility requirement.
So, and I have confirmed the date. It's April 4th, 2020, with the exception of the coastal areas. So there was the area in the coast that abutted the coastal zone boundary that the Board of Supervisors granted an additional extension to 2022 for cultivators within that area. It does not impact this area though. This area sunsetted April 4th, 2020.
Thank you.
Deputy County Counsel Matthew Gadrowski, just one tweak to that. It's actually May 4th, 2020. It was tied to the effective date of the ordinance.
Thank you.
We stand corrected.
Okay, thank you. And I'm sorry, Siobhan, I'm not really clear on your answer. So say there are 10 parcels that are looking at creating a CA district. How many of those, does only one of those parcels need to have been growing prior to, no, does only one of those parcels have to be growing? Or is there a minimum number of parcels that have to grow to create the district?
No.
And could you tell me about how many plants, I don't know if you know this answer or not, but Ag Department, you might, how many plants can be grown in a 2,500 square foot area approximately?
The county has adopted a square foot canopy based on the calculation using the drip line or the configuration of the garden to make the full canopy determination. So it's very difficult to answer how many plants. I personally have inspected approximately 180, maybe 200 cultivation sites, and it really does depend on how the farmer has set it up. For example, a true full sun outdoor grower calculating the canopy of hundreds of plants that are 3 feet apart from each other is different than someone who cultivates within a planter box in hoop houses that are all 1,000 square feet exact. So how many plants? I'm not even sure the cannabis division uses a plant count, but rather their full canopy scope.
So if you thought about the canopy of a plant maybe being 10 feet by 10 feet or something like that, so 100 square feet, you'd be looking at about 25 plants sitting within that area. So, you know, the canopies of these plants can be rather large depending, and so on the cultivation techniques used. And so that's often a factor of how many plants you fit in with it within that area. So it's really based upon the square footage, not the number of plants.
Okay. And I believe the applicant, I apologize, I don't remember if it's this application or the other one, but he's only going on, if I'm not mistaken, 0.015 acres.
That's the other one.
I read.
I believe that's the, this property is approximately 0.005 acres under the required 2. So the McGinty property is very close to not sunsetting, but it's still shy of the 2 acre minimum.
Okay. And I guess part of my concern is the number of applicants or property owners within these areas that are not growing. I have concerns about them not really understanding this whole process. Number one, that it could be 20 feet or even less up to their property line with an administrative permit. Do they understand that once the CA district is created, it will not change for a minimum of 10 years up to 13 years? you know, I have a concern that the property owners aren't really seeing the big picture here. And then if they go to sell and they are not growing and their neighbor is growing, what is that going to do to their property values? And I guess I'm speaking to this as a commissioner looking out for the public's interest. And I have a concern about that. And I know, you know, buyer beware and that sort of thing, but it's a concern I have. That's probably all the questions that I have. I hear a comment coming.
Well, Siobhan could respond to that at least a little bit. And then I think also we could hear from the applicant about the process they went through to garnish the landowner support within the district. So, but I first let Siobhan respond.
The staff very much understands your concern regarding the adjacent properties to the district itself, not necessarily, you know, the sort of mix. What I can say is, given the evidence of cultivation on the subject parcels seen through aerial imagery before the Redwood Valley fires, staff is confident that if approved, there will be several property owners who are eligible to earn cultivation permits that will apply. I think that one of our issues as far as who we see not growing is because it's been so long. Recall that in 2017, there was no such thing of an accommodation district. So if you didn't get in the queue and make sure that the county knew you wanted to grow, it wasn't a very advantageous move for you. And so staff does believe that several people who are on parcels that are smaller than 10 acres within the two proposed districts will move forward and submit applications to cultivate, because it does appear that the parcels themselves at least had cultivation activity. So I think because we are so far away from original adoption of the ordinance and we've gone through so many amendments and changes, it's strange to look at this zone and think and know that there are only 2 current applications. But I believe that there are a lot more eligible parcels and cultivators within the district. Yes.
Thank you.
So Greg Nelson here.
Go ahead, Greg.
Would it be possible for a cultivator that has less than 2 acres to do a boundary line adjustment if they could convince a neighbor to sell them 0.05, you know, a small portion, and then be eligible to continue growing?
I believe that could be possible, but I'm not 100% sure how, again, advantageous it would be given the fact that the board did create the accommodation district. The second thing, in the case of the CA districts, all of the potential cultivators know that they're maxed out at 2,500 square feet of canopy. So there really is no additional action they could ever take to allow for them to grow more than that on that site. And so you may want to ask Dylan. He may have tried that before submitting the application for the accommodation district. I'm not sure.
Yeah, and I just want to add a comment on that is just with any sort of boundary line adjustment, sometimes, you know, even though it may make sense to allow somebody to be able to get out of this sunset provision, if you have a different zoning district or you have a different acreage minimum or the adjoining parcel is conforming to the district minimum parcel size, we can't make that non-conforming in terms of the minimum acreage. So there's sometimes just constraints due to the parcels surround you that we could not approve a boundary line adjustment to allow them to transfer acreage into this. So
thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
I had a question.
Go ahead.
Okay, the question is, what I understood was if you weren't already showing that you grew marijuana, and that's why we have these 2 Cs in the district, so to speak, identifying. What I heard was that you can't grow, but now I heard in this last statement that if you can show in the past you were growing pot, even though you didn't apply, you eventually will be able to grow. And that was my concern, because you see a lot of these parcels might not be participating in growing marijuana. So what you're saying, when we do this district, any of these two districts that we're looking at today, at any time in the future, I need it clarified. They could come forward and apply to be part of this, even though they didn't. In the future, they can make their parcel be a cultivating of marijuana. And my last question right now is, when you talk 2,500 square feet of canopy coverage, that includes a hoop house too, correct?
No. Okay, so I'll start with the first question. Approval of the CA district pursuant to chapter 20.118 allows all eligible parcels in the district 180 days to submit the cultivation permit.
Okay, thank you.
So think of it as a reopening for that said district.
Okay.
Your second question, I think I forgot.
Was about the 2,500 and whether or not could be hoop houses.
It is my understanding that the cannabis division does not include space used to access the plants as part of the canopy calculation. So if your 1,000 square foot hoop house has a walkway, we would not say the whole hoop house is 1,000 square feet of canopy.
So the question is, you can do two different things.
Yeah.
Yes.
You get 2,500 square feet, whether you grow in a hoop house or not.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes. Oh, and I would like to add with the hoop house, just to be clear, the setback reduction to 20 feet is not applicable to buildings. So your hoop house still has to maintain the setbacks prescribed within the zoning designation.
Right. Very good. Okay.
Yes.
So that would be 50 feet.
I didn't hear. I'm sorry.
She was asking what the setback could be for those then, if they have to comply.
Well, that is an interesting question. Let's take out the word hoop house and instead use the word structure, because there are a number of different types of permits the cultivator could seek to permit said structure. There are different setbacks for the structures depending on the type of structures they're actually erecting. For the most part, it is 50 feet, yes.
Okay, thank you. Madeline? Yeah.
My question really is, there are a number of parcels in this district that are not currently cultivating. Are we clear that the water agencies who did not comment on this district, are we comfortable with the water use if everybody applies?
Well,
I'm just unclear about that, whether they have thought this through, especially in light of the fire and all that. You know, I know Redwood Valley is pretty impacted for water.
Do recall, they have to earn a cultivation permit. One of the requirements to earn a cultivation permit is a demonstration of water. So the cannabis division evaluates that as part of the process to issue the cultivation permit.
Okay, so there is another checkpoint there. That's
so this CA district does not entitle the owners within it to obtain a license. They still have to pass all the standards from the 10A17 chapter in order to receive that cultivation permit.
And so the water agencies would have a chance to comment on every application as it was made.
What I would reframe that, every parcel, in order to be issued a county cultivation permit, will either need all parcels need a water quality permit, And depending on the source of water, they may also need water rights. And so there are permits required to apply for the county permit.
Gotcha. Okay, that's good. I like that.
Other questions? I think we've
Siobhan?
lost.
Oh, Siobhan, I had a question and just to clear this up, I am aware that there are permittees here in Mendocino County that have, let's say, 10 1,000 square foot greenhouses. I would assume that the 10,000 square feet is the total is the 10 1,000 square foot hoop houses. But then it seems from what you said, it sounds like we're just talking canopy. So could you just clear that up?
So what I think is one thing that has always contributed to the confusion around cannabis ever since I recall is the differentiation between the local regulations in the state, specifically the way in which or the methodologies imposed to calculate the canopy. A large cannabis operation with multiple greenhouses or hoop houses more than likely has employees. It is often that those structures are commercial structures, and the structures themselves do not represent the full scope of canopy being cultivated. Rather, the structures themselves represent the facility housing all of the employees in the product. The state makes their own calculations to determine what license the cultivator gets. For the county permit, because I do not work for the cannabis division, I say with some confidence, not 100% confidently, that any of the walkways or dead space or storage space is excluded from the county calculation for canopy, regardless of the way the structure was built or the type of occupancy it holds.
Okay.
So yes, we calculate how much flowering cannabis they grow.
And not the size of the greenhouse.
Not the size of the greenhouse, nor the plants that are not flowering.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Confusing. Yes, I have a question.
Yes.
Marilyn. I know notification needs to be given in a lot of circumstances for permits, like posting on properties and that sort of thing. I'm curious how many property owners outside the CA district are notified. Is there a footage requirement or adjacent properties, or how much notification is given in the CA district, for the CA district?
So for this public hearing today, we provide notice to all adjacent landowners that fall. The code requirement is 300 feet of parcel boundaries. We notice 350 feet just to make sure we've captured everybody. And then additionally, we publish a notice in the newspaper of general circulation for the area. And we do that a minimum of 10 days prior to the hearing. So it's published a minimum of 10 days prior to the hearing. And that was the case with these items. And in addition, these property owners within the actual district are well aware, as they signed a petition to agree to this application being filed. So they would be in full know-how that this application would be coming forward.
Correct. I understand those in the district, but I guess my concern also is, well, what about those other property owners? And some of them I believe we have heard from who are outside of that 350 feet, who may not have been notified. And I guess you don't have to post it on the boundaries of the CA district that this is being created. Is that correct?
No, so underneath planning and zoning law, there's the ability, they give you different options in terms of how you can provide legal notice. And we always like to do 2 of the options that are available to make sure we have ensured proper notice. You can, as an option, post a notice at the site, but alternatively, you can also mail it to adjacent landowners as well as publish it in a newspaper of general circulation. We have typically opted for the mailing to adjacent landowners and posting of the notice in a newspaper of general circulation. And so that additional step of posting at the site is not required under planning and zoning law.
Okay, thank you, Julia. And I understand that, but it doesn't really make me comfortable with other areas and neighborhoods that are in areas that are so close that may be affected, but are kind of left out of the system. And I appreciate your comment about the local posting it, as we talked about in the Ukiah Daily Journal. In today's world, I'm not sure many people read the paper, or at least look at those parts of the paper, even online, that address that. So those are my comments. Do we have any other questions or comments from the commissioners for staff?
We have one additional comment here. I would just like to turn it over to Siobhan.
Staff did receive comment from the Redwood Valley MAC and spoke to their representative about their concerns. They had a lot of questions very similar to those that we've reviewed today. I believe that the applicant also reached out to the Redwood Valley MAC and could speak more eloquently about that conversation. I did read the comments that we were received from adjacent property owners outside of the district. I would also like to tell this board that last Thursday, staff personally spent 2 hours in the district, essentially observing some of the comments that had come in previously, looking at traffic, looking at, just generally what happens in the area from day to day. What was interesting is that Comcast and Xfinity had quite a few workers and trucks out there, and so they made it rather difficult for me to be dealing with the observations that I was doing. But I can tell you that from the publicly traveled roads, the parcels in the proposed district are very well concealed. And even though there is a lot of continued degradation from the fires, that area is doing a great job trying to rebuild. And staff is confident that if given the opportunity and they can demonstrate eligibility, applicable cultivators can use this to continue putting their lives back together.
Okay, thank you. I believe we could now hear from the applicant or the agent. Do we have that applicant online?
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we
Yes,
can.
I can.
Please just state your name for the record.
Yeah, hi, my name's Dylan McGinty. I live at 10400 West Road. I'm the person responsible for the application. Just to clarify a little summary on the spot, I've lived at that location since 2014, where I had just a regular lease with the Collins, where I was cultivating, 6 to 12 plants with my brother there, and I had a legal operation in the hills before the cultivation stuff was coming aboard. In 2015, we made the option to do a lease option on the house on the idea that the county had came out with their first table, which was going to include the 2-acre cultivation RR2s to be in. So we decided to attempt to purchase the property in a lease option. We have got the owner's approval to apply for the commercial cannabis license there. We applied, we got into the system. in 2016, 17, they revised the cannabis program and essentially eliminated or were taking out the RR2s, which is pretty much 90% of Milo community right there. Given across the street, there is a 10,000 square foot permit, and right across the street, there is another 5,000 just because, you know, RR10, RR5. Like Siobhan said, you know, 90% of the applicants or the people that have signed to make this a CA district, you know, have been there pretty much 15, 20 years. They've been cultivating. They're 25, they're mom and pop operations. The reason some of them did not come into the program was that initial fear of, hey, we cannot get permitted, we're just going to throw ourselves under the bus. So I took the time to go around with this. I explained, I got the county's write-up of what a CA district was and what it entitled and what it would do to each person's property. You know, I had meetings with all the neighbors that had the permit, that had signed the applicants. They were fully aware of what a CA district was. They were in favor to it because of the chance of maybe being able to come back in and permit their properties. As far as my property goes, like Siobhan said, it is completely concealed from West Road behind a fence with locked gates, with security system. That property itself was the first state inspected garden in Mendocino County. And, you know, John, the state inspector, pretty much said that this was a great first example for the state, and I had 0 infractions. I also met all my property boundaries without any setbacks. So that property actually meets the required 50-foot setbacks, and all the setbacks that were initial. I'm not seeking to expand. I'm not seeking to go closer to my neighbor's property line. Most of these are already pre-existing cultivations and cultivation spots that we just look to either continue our businesses and rebuild from these fires and, you know, have the opportunity to be able to give back in taxes. I know there are a couple homes that, you know, that had cultivations that were going to trying to be coming into the program that, you know, when the fires happened, they lost their complete houses, properties. The neighbor behind me, they had a cultivation. They were looking to get into the program. Their property burnt. Since they weren't sure if they were going to be able to continue cultivating, they moved their operation into Potter Valley. That property still sits vacant with no improvements made on it. Going back to a couple comments I heard about being able to purchase neighbors' properties to expand, the sunset essentially is going to eliminate anyone in an RR2. So me attempting to buy my neighbor's property would not help me in any way, because then I would be sitting on a 5-acre piece of property that's zoned RR2. And to my understanding, it's anything under 3 acres that is going to get sunsetted. So given that my property is only 1.8, originally it was 2, but to get the county's access to use Mohawk, they had to take back the 0.005, which makes mine a 1.9. But as far as you know, a lot of things to these are just pre-existing cultivations that, you know, they've either attempted to try to look into program, you know, getting permitted, but since the sunset period happened, you know, it took me almost a month, 2 months till the deadline to turn into the CA district to even know that this was even an option for us. I don't know if Siobhan had told you guys or mentioned that mine was the first civilian CA district. So the other 5 were done or helped through the county program. Mine, you know, I did it completely myself. Yeah, you know, we're not looking to expand. We're not looking to have people out of the community move into properties. to be able to cultivate. My intentions were strictly for people that have been in this community, that have been doing this a long time, to continue to do it and to have some comfort, even from a person like me that, I work, all my businesses work with Randy and his company, that we do all the steps correctly. A lot of these people have even taken the initiative to help them or volunteer to help them get through the process. So for me, it's just essentially a step for me to stay into my community, stay in this little area and keep doing what I've been doing. As far as the cultivation and greenhouses and stuff like that, the county has put deadlines or setbacks, or, like for my property or an RR2 or anyone in these, there are a limit to how many hoop houses you can build. I believe if you're under 5 acres, you're only allowed 1 or 2,000 square foot ag exempt hoop house. So there are a lot of limitations on what we still can do or build there. But, as an applicant's point of view, this is an area where, if you look at it through satellite, there might only be 2 growers that have entered the program, but this is an area where cultivation has been happening a long time. People depend on this for extra income. And for me, I see it as a way to continue to keep at my business, to keep giving back to the community, and even have an opportunity to help other people rebuild from the fires, because as Siobhan said, we're still impacted by, the loss of trees, the loss of houses. Just there's a lot, that could come of the income of people being able to work their farms and their businesses and be, not have to pick up and move, change schools for their kids. For us, we're just asking to be able to continue our way of life there. And I feel like this community is a pretty close-knit community to where, I know all my neighbors know all me, they all know who I am. It's not like, we're all strangers there. It's, we're just trying to help each other out. And there are a lot of neighboring parcels that, are looking to have this happen so that they can, either join the program or continue with their applications that they stopped due to, the fear of getting sunset in and wasting money and just all these hoops you have to jump through to not be able to keep your business.
Okay, thank you, Dylan. I'm sure there's probably questions from the commission. Any of the commissioners have questions for the applicant? I'm seeing no questions, so at least at this time. Okay, I do have a question from Commissioner Wiedemann.
Sounds like she's muted.
Ms. Wiedemann, thank you.
Is your property, I'm looking for your property, is it Randy? It's not your name.
No, it should be under the Collins. It would be the north parcel that is adjacent.
Stephen Collins?
Yeah, it'd be the one that's on the corner of Mohawk and Westwood.
Okay, thank you.
I believe I have a question. It may be a question for staff. I understood that these parcels were less than 2 acres. Numerous parcels here that are asking to be within the CA district are greater than 2 acres. I'm not sure if this is a staff question. I believe it probably is.
Thank you for that question, Siobhan Holmes. So it's not a requirement that the parcel be less than 2 acres to form the district. The less than 2 acre threshold is the sunset threshold. So what you see here is Dylan has gotten together a group of property owners that have mixed parcels. They have parcels that don't sunset, but are willing to be included in the district as part of, to lend support to Dylan's cause.
Thank you, Siobhan. That clarifies it very well. Thank you. Other questions for the applicant? Yes, Greg.
So I have to admit failing here. But there were, I believe, 3 comment letters that we received earlier, and I'm not clear right now whether they were all in reference to this application, or whether any of them were to the next application. But one of them commented, "I don't want to be part of the district," and I'm not sure whether. Well, I'm curious to know if anybody can tell me whether that particular comment is related to Redwood Valley, and if indeed she was included in the district.
One second.
Yeah, if you could give us just a minute so we can look through the comment letters here. Do you by chance recall the name of the commenter who said they didn't want to be in the district?
I'm sorry. That was, yeah, my failing. I don't recall.
No problem. We'll take a look here.
I do believe you may be speaking of the second item that was here. Staff did receive a comment from someone who is an adjacent property owner, but they were not, yes, I believe it's this one.
Yeah.
They were not in the actual proposed district.
Right.
Staff did speak to that person directly and explained to them that they weren't included in the district, and that it didn't rezone their property in a way in which it would change the underlying zoning, but rather what I gave them more information about the overlay itself, and that it was rather in addition to.
And so that is related to the next item on the agenda. So we want to talk about it under there. But however, I do want to note for the benefit of the commissioners that we did receive an additional public comment letter this morning, which is posted to the website under this item. It's labeled as public comment number 4 underneath this rezone. And since we haven't gone to the public hearing yet, I'm of course happy to read that comment letter that came in this morning into the record if that's helpful. But first we could see if the commissioners, I'm not sure if you have a chance to pull it up and take a look at it at home as well.
Yeah, I just have one question. I believe there was a letter from, I don't remember the first name, but it's a parcel on, under the name of Gerald Sheldon. And it was, I believe, Mrs. Sheldon who commented and wrote a letter, concerns for health issues and some other issues. And I don't know how many others pertain to, like Greg, I'm kind of lost track. That's the hard part about all this coming in after we get the packet and then trying to print it and doing all this stuff virtually. It's difficult. But anyway, that I know that the Sheldon is one of the people who is outside the district, across the street from houses within the district.
And Marilyn, if you would like, I'm happy. I have up on our screen, I do have our Planning Commission agenda page pulled up here. I can just briefly click through the 4 comment letters that were provided for this item. If you guys would like for me to do that and have them shared on the screen. I'm seeing a head nod of yes. So let me go ahead and do that. So we're going to go ahead and do.
I think that would be good, but we also have the applicant to answer questions. Can we still leave him open for answering any other questions?
Yes, of course. Okay, so let me go ahead and share here. So sharing screen, you'll see this is our Planning Commission website. This is the agenda page for this item. We're under this item here, R2019-0009. So the first public comment letter provided was this one that Chair Ogle mentioned, the Donna Sheldon, stating that they were against the rezoning. So we had that comment letter initially provided here. Then we had comment letter number 2. which this comment letter was the handwritten letter, and pardon me for reading the name, from Barbara Silva. And this, again, providing comment about where she lives, and did not feel that they needed a CA district. Then going on to public comment number 3. This item came from Sati Clark, and they are a neighbor of the Cannabis Accommodation District, also expressing their opposal to the rezoning. And then this last comment letter, comment number 4, this is the one that came in overnight here. So this one, I will read this one into the record since this has only been posted as of this morning. So it says, Dear Planning Commission, I oppose the rezoning of these parcels off of Rust Road and Redwood Valley for cannabis cultivation. I am not an opponent of this industry and view it as a potential asset to our communities. However, it appears that at this time, our county's planning and building service does not have adequate resources to guarantee that the best interest of adjacent homeowners is served. The Department of Fish and Wildlife, the gatekeeper of the riparian zones in our Russian River watershed, is not able to follow through soon enough to prevent potential violations. Rezoning these parcels would also set a precedent in our community and threaten its most valuable assets even more. Its visual beauty and abundant wildlife that attracts visitors from all over the state, its well-known organic wine and horse farming culture, and its open, rolling hills and vineyards. Protection of the environment, wildlife, riparian zones, water table, excessive odors, and the mitigation of increased volume and speeding on West Road should be our main concern at this time. Signed, Patricia Riss Yarbo, Redwood Valley Municipal Advisory Council. And that is all the public comment letters for this item. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off my screen share.
Okay, thank you. And I believe if in looking at the packet, I'm not mistaken, there is one letter from Aaron, I believe, Osterbrank on Rolling Hills Road or whatever. I'm asking you to please allow for the over. So we have this one letter supporting the district.
There should have been one more from a Paul that supported it as well.
I think I ever got it.
No, we only had the one here in our packet, at least that we had for distribution to the commissioners at this time. But again, as part of the requirement for a CA district, the applicant does have to garnish the landowner support for folks within the district, which the applicant has met that threshold for this application.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for staff or for the applicant at this time? Okay, I think we will go ahead and take a 5-minute break before we open the public hearing. So we'll reconvene at, let's say, 10:50.
Oh, and excuse me, we had one thing we noticed procedurally during the break that we would just like take the opportunity to ensure we have on the record, which was we had skipped over the section of ensuring that we did the determination of proper legal notice. So we would just like to confirm for the record that all items were properly noticed for this hearing.
Okay.
And then if we continue on with this item, then I think we are ready for public comment. And I can just tell you.
Actually, very quickly, sorry, this is Deputy County Counsel Matthew Kudrowski. I noted Commissioner Jacobson wasn't back yet, but he's returning now.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm back. And after talking to legal counsel, I was not aware that Mr. McGinty is a client of ours. So I'm going to have to recuse myself from this application. But I did check, and Mr. Thatcher is not a client of ours, so I will be available to review that application.
But we still have a quorum regardless of Randy needing to recuse, right?
Yes, you do, because we do have 4 commissioners still present.
Okay, good. Just checking.
We do have a quorum, but does that require that all 4 commissioners vote in favor or against in order to complete the quorum? Not sure how I.
Yes, so in this instance, and I would just like to remind the commission that this is a recommendation that you are providing today. And so you would need to have either, if you're making a motion to recommend approval or denial, you would need to have all 4 members voting in that direction. What we have had before is where the commission cannot come to an agreement in relation to a motion that has a majority vote. You can also opt to forward this item to the Board of Supervisors without a recommendation, which is something that the commission did do last year on a general plan amendment and rezone. So that option is still on the table as well if the commission cannot come to an agreement.
Okay, thank you, Julia. Then I think at this point, did you have another comment or should we open the public hearing?
I think we could go ahead and open the public hearing.
Okay, we can open the public hearing. Yeah. This is a point where we will address any telecomments that have been submitted, that have submitted their form and are waiting on the line. The clerk will read the list in order and call the next speaker. When called to speak, please state your name for the record. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per person. Speakers are asked to please address their comments to the meeting chair and to refrain from using or conversation with members of the audience staff. So do we have any public comments?
We have no requests for telecomment for this item. And as we went over before, there were the 4 public comment letters submitted, which we've reviewed already on the screen here.
Okay, then at this point, we will close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission members. And again, I believe Dylan is still on the line if you have any questions for the applicant. So any questions or comments from commissioners? Okay, none from now, Madeline, none from
I've got
Diana.
one, Chairwoman, Greg Nelson.
Yes, go ahead.
I'm still hesitant about supporting this because of the reduced setback from neighbors that aren't part of the group. I guess I'm looking for somebody to convince me to support it.
I guess the one thing I could offer is that Mr. McGinty made it kind of clear that these were people who were already doing this and may have had it interrupted because of the fires, and then they were afraid they were going to get sunsetted, so they didn't reapply then. But I think this is an area where these adjustments have already been made. It sounds like it's a pretty long established cultivation area. My own concern was really about if everybody builds out to the max, what happens about water? And it sounds like we get to look at that at every application. So I'm comfortable with that. I agree. It is a little bit concerning that they can go. I wish the setback around the whole boundary was 50
Yes.
feet and
Me
not
too.
the interior of it, that they can
Right.
build right up to their fences as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
But from the outside, I do wish it were still 50 feet, but I'm somewhat accepting of, the constraints of the terrain there and stuff.
So it sounds to me like the current owners don't have a great deal of an intent to expand, but the property could be sold, and a new owner then could expand right up to the 20 feet or less with administrative
No.
support.
Could you, with the permission of the chair, if we could have staff answer that question? I think Siobhan will be able to provide some clarity.
Regarding the ability for an approved county permit to be transferred to a new property owner, staff believes that there are additional requirements for that transaction to occur, which would happen within the cannabis division. Given that there are only 2 current pending CA districts, I would suggest that the commission review attachment B to the staff report one more time, because that aerial image does give quite a bit of information regarding where the hoop houses or greenhouses that are existing are in relation to those property boundaries. And if you can see with just a very brief peripheral glance, it is almost as though the cultivators knew to centralize those activities on the subject parcels rather than have them too close to the property boundaries. I think we could hear from Dylan a little bit more. I believe his site, I wasn't his inspector, so I didn't specifically inspect his cultivation site, but there are also other setbacks that tend to drive the configuration of the actual cannabis cultivation site. Remember, to get that cultivation permit, there are setbacks that the water board may require that are much more enhanced than the 20-foot that the accommodation district requires. Meaning, if one of these properties has a seasonal waterway, but it's very close to the property boundary, the chapter 20.118 won't just get rid of that. They would still need to be far enough away from the seasonal creek, depending on what the water board said. And so I believe some of the concerns, especially the environmental ones, they are analyzed during their cultivation permit application, because that's the primary function of the cannabis inspector. So there are multiple opportunities for staff to ensure that cultivation activities within 20 feet of property boundaries regarding a cultivation permit do not engender additional significant impacts. Or in fact, if there are issues with the neighbors, again, the rezone only allows for you to apply for cultivation. If there's more to your site, at the point where you submit your application for cannabis, that's when we would get into a lot of those issues.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note too that, when we went through these standards, the commission did review these standards previously back in October 18th of 2018. I know some members were not on the commission at that time, but if we think about a site that's less than 2 acres in size and requiring 50-foot setbacks, that is a substantial amount of property that is lost in terms of being usable space, and really makes it sort of an untenable situation to try to have any degree of cannabis cultivation. If you require 50-foot setbacks, you essentially prohibit the cultivation of cannabis on those sites. the intention behind these CA districts was to have these reduced standards because the landowners were in support of this, and that would allow these applicants to cultivate and not have these issues related to the 50-foot setbacks and not being able to comply with that. But that's the strong reason for the landowner support, is to ensure that those districts, the neighbors that are the closest, I understand the concern about the neighbors directly adjacent to the boundaries. But, you know, I think the challenge here is that these are the standards in the ordinance, and this ordinance was, you know, recommended for approval by the Planning Commission to the Board of Supervisors and adopted by the board in 2018. It would be very hard pressed to change these standards as a result of these two applications, acknowledging that we already have existing CA districts that use these standards throughout the county.
Well, like I
Going
say,
back to
I
Greg's-
really want to change it. I do.
I
Sorry.
want to interject here. Going back to Greg's question, if the property did sell, and the new owner obviously would not fall under this, so he could not grow under this. Could he? Is that correct?
You can transfer.
I believe if a current property owner was issued a cultivation permit, they could potentially transfer their issued permit to a new property owner. Again, however, that person would still have to maintain all eligibility requirements, not only for the county permit, but also for their state license, and they would still be capped at 2,500 square feet of canopy. Yes.
Okay, I guess I misunderstood. Apparently then that permit goes with the property, not with the owner of the property. Is that
No, thanks.
Deputy County Counsel Matthew Gadrowski, not technically no. This is still a permit to the applicant, but the board adopted the ability for one applicant to transfer to a later owner of that property, either through sale or in some cases, you know, death of an existing permit holder.
okay? Thank you. So that answers that. And Madeline, I apologize for kind of jumping in there, but I think you were next.
I forget what I was saying.
So I have to write everything down.
I know.
Diana,
Yes. The one thing we can do is the perimeter, right? The perimeter of this zone, all the parcels, you as planners can not allow a 20-foot, the 20-foot setbacks when you're doing an administrative permit for it. We could say something like the perimeter cannot be encroached upon in that 20-foot. That's something we can do to try to basically, I'm trying to find the happy medium here. And when I look at this parcel, I mean, there's several buildings right on the parcel line in the middle part, right? If you look, there's already several, look to me like barns or greenhouses, whatever they are, that are already within the 20-foot setback. So, so that's all I'm saying is the outside, if we're trying to protect the outside neighborhood, and really what we're trying to protect in is probably from as much impact as far as I would probably think it's going to be odor. If we don't reduce that, if we give you the capability to reduce that down to what individual needs, I think that's a problem. So that's in order for me to vote in favor of passing this forward, I would like something to say the perimeter is protected. We will not allow 20-foot, through administrative process, we would not allow the reduction of that 20-foot.
Guys, can I say something real quick?
And I would like to just, go ahead.
Can I say something real quick? I noticed my mic was muted. Just to maybe help this whole situation, there are still setbacks from cultivation to a residence house. There's 75-foot setback, so it doesn't matter where the property line is. Me, myself, I still have, you know, no matter what the permit is, that the cultivation has to be a certain setback from a residence house. So it's not, you know, it's not ideal for someone to put it in the corner of their property with less than a 20-foot setback, because in most of these instances, the neighboring house is closer than 20 feet or 50 feet to the property line in these smaller parcels. So I hear the concerns, but just know that there already are things set that, you know, I can't put my cultivation to the edge of my property that's touching my neighbor's house, because there, no matter applications or not, there are certain guidelines that you have to abide by. You know, just because I file for an the application doesn't mean that I'll be able to put mine closer than 20 feet, because you still have the setback to a residence, or the 200. Yeah, the 200 feet to a creek. So I believe I've attended a lot of the Board of Supervisors meetings, and I was here when this one got brought up, and this was more or less to protect a four corner to where there was 4 cultivators that were all in favor of cultivating, to allow to use that common corner more or less. But in instances of mine or my neighbors, you wouldn't be able to get more than 75 feet from a neighboring residence with your cultivation. So given the requirements or even the setbacks, I physically wouldn't even be able to move my cultivation due to those limitations.
So, and just to add on to what Mr. McGinty said, you know, I think staff would be concerned about essentially preempting the ability for applicants within the CA district to apply for an administrative permit to reduce those setbacks down below 20 feet, because it is a discretionary process. And that is something that, you know, we have to look at the individual merits of each site to determine whether or not that's appropriate. And it does have the opportunity for public input from adjacent landowners and things such as that to determine the validity of that. So, you know, I would be concerned about prohibiting the ability for folks within the CA district to be able to apply for that setback reduction, because it really should be able to be looked at on an individual basis for each site requesting that as part of the cultivation permit.
I know that I did not realize that the other setbacks, like creek setbacks and whatnot, would not be overridden by this. So I'm a lot more comfortable with that.
And even so on my property, I have approval from the water district, and I have a well that I monitor. I don't use the water district, I use my well, but I even have a setback to my own well that I can cultivate, a water source. And so, you know, given those little things, it still makes it very difficult to find a prime piece of property on my property where you meet those setbacks. So I do see the concern. I hear the concern, and going back to other issues that I've had, not on this property, but with code enforcement, the number one enforcement through cannabis is neighbor complaint. So even though you have a permitted property, your neighbor still can call and complain, even though, granted, that's not what we're trying to have, is the ability of people calling and saying, or not to leave that to where it's someone having to call to enforce it, but still code enforcement, and I've experienced this, trumps the local permit because of what's it called, how it impacts your daily life. So even though I have a permitted cultivation, if the neighbor was to feel like it was impacting their everyday life, they still have code enforcement can still come out to my permitted property and make sure I'm following all my rules or my setbacks. Or I think in this instant, if that's what's holding us up is the 20-foot setback, I'm more than confident to say that there's many cultivators that can still join the program and not intrude on that 20 or less.
I agree.
And I would just like to correct one thing that Mr. McGinty said. The setback distance is actually 100 feet to adjacent residences, just to make sure that's clear, rather than the 75 that was mentioned.
And Julia, what defines the adjacent residency, right? I mean, we're looking at adjacent residency on a neighboring parcel.
Yes.
So if you have but here's where it gets confusing. If there's already an existing resident and there's already an existing grow that's being allowed, and you come on a property and you, as a planner, says, I can, wait a minute, this is tight. The only way you're gonna make this is we're gonna encroach 6 feet to the property line, and I'm gonna sign that off. That's where it gets, and it gets down to trying to find the land use languages to protect. I understand we're trying to allow people to grow, but we're trying to protect the parcel. And the issue, I just feel like it leaves the door a little open. I don't know why we can't just say the perimeter be 20 feet.
Chair Ogle, this is Brent Schultz, Planning Director. Could I speak to the commission?
Yes.
Thank you. You guys are doing a good job. This is not an easy issue, right? The land use is not. But one of the things I want to just consult you on, you are considering a rezone. This is not to consider setbacks. We don't have, this isn't like a development project on a use permit that I'm having you look at it and they're submitting a variance to our setbacks or a height variance, and we have to make findings. This is just like the previous item. You're to focus on, is this rezone acceptable to a CA district? And did we make the proper findings on that? Now, I will tell you, this cannabis ordinance is coming back in some form to the board. It has to by April 21st to do use permits. We've proposed combining 10A17 and 2242 into one chapter. And that would be the appropriate time to, when it comes to you and you relook at it when if and when it gets combined, and you look at those sections, because the CA district will be in there, right, Julia? Mm-hmm. And if you don't like setbacks or things like that, that would be the appropriate time to bring up, because of these previous things, we have concerns about it. But right now, I'm at a little bit of a loss as your director on how we can restrict something that's already baked into our ordinances that allows them to do it.
Well, they exist.
And they exist, right? So anyway, I just really encourage the commission to focus on is this CA district rezone? Do you concur with our recommendation that the Planning Commission recommend to the Board of Supervisors that they adopt this addendum and the mitigated neg deck and then rezone? And that's just all I had to say.
Other comments or questions from commissioners? Madeline, did it come back to your head as to what you were going to ask or comment on?
No, I think it's all gotten covered, really. I just wanted to make sure that we are sensitive to the adjoining non-district parcels. I am totally good with the parcels within the combining district to do whatever is legally permitted for them to do. I just want to make sure that they can't do it to their neighbors. And it sounds like everybody's pretty comfortable about that.
I think that's still where I have a problem as far as the notification and it affecting other neighbors that may not have been notified, that may not read the newspaper, and they aren't adjacent or they aren't within the 350 feet. And I have a problem with that. And I also have a problem with the fact that we have 4 comments from I believe neighbors in the area who are against the creating the CA district. So those are my concerns, along with some of the concerns that Greg mentioned. Any other comments?
We
from
add
commissioners?
discussion at the commission.
Yes,
believe,
we are.
I believe, Marilyn, I think you already closed the public hearing. I'm looking at our staff here. Yes, you did. So yes, this is before the commission at this point.
Well, I guess what I would say is I definitely want to make these neighborhoods able, way back when we were first discussing this, I kept thinking we should have opt-in and opt-out areas, and that has come to pass. And I don't really want to overthink it, but I do want both the applicant and the staff to know that what we decide now is going to play out for 100 years, maybe, you know what I mean? And that we have to think in that frame.
Through the chair, this is Siobhan Holmes. I just wanted to also add that there are current approved accommodation districts that were approved by the Board of Supervisors. So the Covelo Fairbanks, Covelo Core, Leggett, and Laytonville CA districts already exist. Those cannabis accommodation districts have 20-foot setbacks.
And also just to be clear that no additional accommodation districts beyond the 2 that you're looking at today can come in, as the deadline for filing those applications closed last year in November, and we have no other pending applications. So you have the 2 in front of you today. That is going to be it for CA districts for the county, full stop.
Okay, I'm ready to make a motion.
Go ahead, Diana.
I make a motion to approve, based on the discussion and the concerns around protecting the neighbors, to approve this application, to go forward, the rezone request to go forward to, and I'm looking for the finding to read.
Deputy County Counsel Matthew Kudrowski, are you looking at page 7 of the staff report for recommended motion?
Yes, that's what I'm looking for. Thank you, Matt.
I can read it for you if you'd like.
By resolution, the Planning Commission recommends that the Board of Supervisors adopt an addendum to the mitigated negative deck and approve the request rezone as proposed by the applicant based on the facts and findings contained in the resolution.
Thank you. And I apologize. I actually have one revision to the resolution that I wanted to share on the screen. So while we are on the motion being made here. So let me go ahead and pull this up. Let me make sure I'm grabbing the right one here. Sharing screen. So this is just to the top header of this resolution, and it's just making clear we had unfortunately just unintentionally omitted that this was a recommendation from the Planning Commission to the Board of Supervisors. So the revised header would now say resolution of the Planning Commission, County of Mendocino, State of California, recommending that the Board of Supervisors adopt an addendum to the previously adopted mitigated negative declaration, parentheses MND, State Clearinghouse 2016-112-028, in compliance with California Environmental Quality Act requirements, and grant a rezone of certain parcels to create a commercial cannabis accommodation. And this should say actually combining rather than combing district. Here we go. And with those changes, those would be the changes recommended by staff. I don't know why it's not registering my other eye. There we go.
Okay.
Add that to the motion.
Me too.
Thank you. So that was a motion by Commissioner Wiedemann and a second by Commissioner Holtkamp, if I understood correctly.
Yes.
Okay.
And so we will now have a vote, please.
I didn't hear you, Marilyn.
Commissioner Holtkamp,
Yes.
Commissioner Wiedemann,
Yes.
Commissioner Nelson,
No.
Chair Ogle.
So the motion fails then for lack of a majority. So we would be looking then for an alternate motion from the commission.
Would a motions to just forward this to the Board of Supervisors without a planning commission recommendation be the thing you're looking for?
I would want to defer to Deputy County Counsel if we first have to have you make an alternate motion for denial before that. I just want to make sure we follow proper procedure here.
Deputy County Counsel Matthew Kudrowski, I'm not entirely sure we have to, if it's a 2-2 vote and it seems pretty clear where we're at, if we did, I want to look back to see what we did for the last round for any kind of recommended motion in terms of how to not recommend anything in particular to the Planning Commission or to the Board of Supervisors.
I have a question. May I? Marilyn, you're muted. Yeah.
Yes, go ahead, Diane.
Yeah, the question I have is and this is just for my clarification. Would having a better protection around the perimeter for the setback get a positive vote? Greg, is that your issue?
Yes, yeah. If it were a 50-foot setback around the perimeter, I would vote for it.
Okay. And Marilyn?
No, I would not, based on my concerns for other neighboring properties and the comments that we had from 4 people who are not in favor of it.
Right. And it's your district, so I hear that. So
Do we get
to
take in consideration that the people that complained aren't in a realistic vicinity?
Mr. McGinty, this is in front of the commission at this time, so I apologize. I'm going to mute you.
I'm not sure where we go here. Do we withdraw our motion?
The motion's fit for lack of a majority, so there's no need to withdraw
Okay.
it. If we could take a 5-minute recess to look at proposed language for a non-recommendation to the board.
Okay.
Yes, we'll take a 5-minute break.
But if people are against it, wouldn't that just be a fail?
No, because you're tied.
If other commissioners are against
Yes.
it.
So right now, you made a motion to approve the project and then had a second on that. That motion failed for lack of a majority. So what we're looking at is whether or not we need to have an alternative motion done recommending denial first and foremost, have the vote play out on that before making a recommendation to forward this on without any recommendation from the Planning Commission. So,
right. So can't one of us just make a motion to deny it and see if that goes?
Deputy County Counsel Matthew Kudrowski, yes, a motion can be made in the alternative that would recommend that the board not approve the rezone and not adopt the negative declaration.
Okay.
Sounds like that would go the same way, though.
Madam
We
Chairman,
should find out.
Yes, Greg.
I would feel comfortable making a motion to forward it to the Board of Supervisors without a recommendation.
Do we have a second? Hearing none, apparently your motion has failed. Where do we go from here, staff?
Well, Deputy County Counsel Matthew Kudrowski, if we could take a 5-minute break to look at some options for the commission, that would be appreciated.
Okay.
Thank you. We'll be back at 11:40.
Okay.
back, it looks like there we have Commissioner Wiedemann, so.
So Deputy County Counsel Matthew Kudrowski, I want to thank the commission for the brief break just to review what we've used in the past to try and move an item like this onto the board. We look back at a very different kind of item from last October from the Planning Commission, but I think we found some language. Well, it's kind of augments what Commissioner Nelson had offered as a motion with little additional language in terms of what goes to the Board of Supervisors. And I'll ask if Chief Planner Acker can read out that motion.
Yeah, so this would be a tentative motion for the commission to consider. This would be the Planning Commission recommends this project, rezone R 2019-0009, be moved to the Board of Supervisors without the recommendation of the Planning Commission, and direct staff to provide a summary of today's proceedings and staff report to the Board of Supervisors.
Okay, do we have any questions for staff over that recommended motion, or do we have a motion?
That was the motion I meant to make.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Seconded by Madeline.
Excellent.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Holtcamp,
Oh, Commissioner Holtcamp, you're on mute at this time, it appears.
Yes.
Commissioner Nelson,
Yes.
Commissioner Wiedemann,
Yes.
and Chair Ogle.
Yes.
All right, well, that motion carries unanimously. So this item will be forwarded to the Board of Supervisors without a recommendation from the Planning Commission today.
Yeah, I just want to thank staff and Siobhan. You were fabulous in explaining and keeping us informed. And I just want to thank you.
Well, we still got one more to look at here, so hang in there.
I was going to say thank you, Siobhan, but you're not off the hook yet. So at this point, we will go on with agenda item number 6B, I believe, case R 019 110011. And that request is somewhere in my packet here. A rezone request to create a cannabis accommodation combining district to facilitate greater flexibility in the development standards related to cannabis cultivation for existing commercial cannabis cultivation sites and suspend the sunset provision for residential districts to facilitate continued operation. Do we have a staff report?
And if I may, Chair Ogle, I just would like, I believe, oh, there we go. I just wanted to note that we can bring Commissioner Jacobzoon back into the meeting here for this item. So Commissioner Jacobzoon, I just want to assure that you are there. Commissioner Jacobzoon, do we have you on the line?
I think he's coming in.
Might want to give him a call.
Here. Let's see. Does not look like he might not be right at his chair there.
Could I offer the suggestion that we take a lunch break, contact him, and come back in half an hour?
Oh.
It's certainly at the discretion of the commission here.
Well, I mean, it's 11:45 and
The only one thing I have is if we weren't able to deal with the setbacks, right, for getting some clarification, how are we going to go forward with this one with even tighter property?
So Deputy County Counsel Matthew Kudrowski, I think we still have to open, hear the item, hear the staff report, and have that discussion later on as part of the item.
Thank you.
We will, should have one more member of the commission to vote on that as well, if Randy comes back online. So I guess the question at this point is, commissioners, yes, Greg.
Would we want to go on to the minutes while somebody phoned Randy?
Well,
Deputy County Counsel Matthew Kudrowski, I've tried contacting Mr. Jacobson on his cell phone and did not get him. There was no answer.
So my recommendation at this point would be that we do take a lunch break. Staff would request that we take a full hour lunch break if that would be possible, so that we would take a recess until about 1 p.m. if that would be possible. And that gives us time to contact Commissioner Jacobson, ensure that he's back in the meeting for that continued portion.
works for me.
That's not good for me, but if Randy's back, you'll have a quorum. I mean, I have a consultation, so it's okay.
Greg, are you comfortable with that?
I'm open for anything. I prefer to do it now.
Me too.
Well, staff is ready to do it now as well, if you'd like to just power through. We are certainly ready
Let's
to
go.
keep going. And just, we would have to acknowledge that Commissioner Jacobson, while his name is on here, he is not actually at the meeting at the moment.
Right.
And maybe
well,
you
let's
could
go
have
ahead.
some other staff person keep trying to contact him.
We will.
Thank you. Then I guess we're at a select report. Siobhan, again.
Shall we take 5 minutes and do the minutes? Maybe Randy will be back by then.
Well, actually, I was going to wait till we got to the minutes. Our minutes were not posted to our website, so we're not going to be able to discuss the minutes today. We will have to discuss those at a subsequent agenda.
Okay, well, let's go.
All right, so then we will go ahead. Oh, Marilyn, you are muted at the moment.
No, I'm not. Siobhan with the staff report, please.
If we've got a second, Marilyn, I'm not sure if it's just me, but your volume is not very high, and sometimes you cut out. And I'm just wondering if maybe you were closer to the speaker, if it would work better.
Yeah, Chair.
Yes. Diana, did you have something?
You need to, we can't hear you.
Are you able to get closer to the speaker?
To be honest, I'm not sure where my speaker is.
Well, it's on your computer, so haul up.
That was better.
That was better. Okay. Am I better now?
Little.
Somewhat.
Hello?
Still spotty.
Still spotty. Okay, when I talk in continuous sentences, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you.
I think that's better.
Okay, I'll sit up straight.
So
Ready for
if-
staff report.
Excellent. Good morning, Planning Commissioners. I am Siobhan Holmes, Staff Planner, Planning and Building Services, before you today to present the rezone application R_2019-0011. This application proposes to create a cannabis accommodation combining district, or alternatively referred to as a cannabis accommodation overlay. As explained in Chapter 10A17 of the Mendocino County Code, the sunset provision requires legal parcels in zoning districts primarily residential in use and less than 2 acres in size cease cultivation activities unless a cannabis accommodation combining district is created. The applicant for this rezone seeks to develop an accommodation combining district of 12 legal parcels zoned suburban residential. The applicant seeks to continue their small cannabis production operation, which has existed with continued use on the subject property for some time. As articulated in the applicant's statement, the purpose of the rezone request is to ultimately be in compliance and part of the solution and not the problem. To do so, the applicant provided a petition of property owners within the proposed district, which includes 10 of 12 signatures of affected owners. The applicant provided several letters of support from community members within proximity of the proposed district, as well as letters from other local cannabis businesses who support the applicant's farm. The proposed district consists of approximately 8.96 acres of land zoned suburban residential. If approved, the new district would be the 5th cannabis accommodation combining district approved by the county. Review of the proposed project under the California Environmental Quality Act determined that an addendum to the adopted mitigated negative declaration best analyzed potential environmental impacts as a result of this application. The addendum is attached to Exhibit B of the resolution. The proposed rezone is consistent with the suburban residential general plan, land use, and zoning designations, as well as the Ukiah Valley Area Plan and Mendocino County Code, Chapter 20.118. I would also like to take this opportunity to correct a few errors that have been identified in the item's documents. As stated previously, the third paragraph on page 2 of the staff report inaccurately reported the action which allows for this application to be submitted. Staff will update the document to reflect that the Board of Supervisors actually adopted Ordinance 4420 on December 18th, 2018. Additionally, the staff report unintentionally omitted 2 APNs that are included in the district. However, that mistake was not made in the legal notice nor in the resolution to this project. With that, staff recommends that the Planning Commission recommend to the Board of Supervisors adopt an addendum to the mitigated negative declaration and approve the rezone request to create a cannabis accommodation combining district R_2019-0011, the Milani Drive, Redwood Valley CA District. I'm open to any questions you may have.
Siobhan, just real quickly, also on that staff report, one of the parcel numbers is not complete. It's 16818. And then there's.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
and that was correct.
Yes. Yes. Staff is aware. Thank you for that.
Yes, and just to share, so that's the parcel numbers, all our legal notices, as well as our agenda have all the correct assessor parcel numbers, and our analysis, our staff report, the resolution, all include the affected parcels. So we have proper notice here, and the resolution for this item does reflect the full request.
Okay, and the date on that has also been corrected on the first page.
To correctly spell August, correct.
Yes.
Thank you again.
Thank you. So do we have questions from the Planning Commission for staff? Checking for Randy, and I don't believe he is even on at all anymore. Is that correct?
Correct. We've not been able to get a hold of him, and at this point, he would not have heard the presentation. He wouldn't really be able to participate within the action on this item. So I think it's best that we continue forward.
And I see no questions or comments from the commissioners. So can we hear for the applicant or agent? Are they online?
I believe they are, and just bear with us one moment while we pull them over into the meeting here. And it looks like we now have them in the on the meeting here. So Steve, if you could unmute yourself and state your name for the record and begin your comments.
Hi, commissioners, staff, and chair. My name is Steve Thatcher. I'm a cannabis farmer. I've been a cannabis farmer for many years, over 10 years here on this piece of property. It's a smaller piece of property. I'm 62 years old, and I can't really see myself going and buying a new piece of property and continuing in this line of work. I'm established here. I have all the state and county, state license, county permits. I've gone through all the background. I've gone through, I'm a little nervous after watching that last one, I have to say, but you know, I'm trying to, I've always wanted to be a part of the solution and not a part of the problem. So back when I started this, of course, I was getting all the almonds, tags and everything else, and staying in compliance with everything that I could stay in compliance with throughout this whole process, coming up to this point where the sunset came into effect. And I went through the process to get the rezoning. I talked to all my neighbors and got enough neighbors to get on board to create this cannabis district. Some neighbors were on board, but they didn't connect directly with the district, so they weren't able to be used. But I would consider them a positive, you know, as far as this this being recommended goes. I don't have letters from them, but I mean, they signed a paper saying they wanted to be part of it. So that's, to me, that's saying that they were in favor. I have letters from my neighbors on both sides of me, one in the district and the other one not in the district. A partial owner signed that paper because there's a family that owns this property, but the people that actually live there is the partial owner, Bobby, Colette, and his wife have signed a thing saying that they've been my good neighbors for many years, and I'm not bothering them with smells or anything like that. I continue to keep the 50-foot, all the state allowances, because I have a state license and I want to, and so 20 foot is never, doesn't matter what side of me it's on. I'm not going to go. I've got my garden set up. There's a perimeter. I have my property line, and then inside is the garden with a 6-foot fence that was needed to go around my garden. So there's a yard within a yard where it's able to be locked up. I have cameras all over my property. I'm hoping that I can continue this business. I have local distributors that are buying my products and are happy with my products. This is a business that has become successful, but I have a chance of being taken out of this. And it makes me a little bit nervous, especially watching that last round. So, you know, there's been environmental studies on this property through the Fish and Wildlife and the State Water Board. Everything is in compliance. Everything that, you know, building and planning, the building inspectors have inspected all my buildings, and everything is approved on this property. I have well water that has been approved by the State Water Board, and so this, you know, so I'm hoping that we can move forward to the Board of Supervisors with this, and you know, and go forward and help me. I do have a couple of neighbors that probably are opposed of this, but I don't think it's because of the rezoning. I think it's a personal thing. But you know, I could explain more on that. I have not seen the letters that are opposed of this, so I don't know what that is, and I don't know who sent them. I'm kind of curious about that. So I look forward to hearing what that's all about, and hopefully have a chance to respond to that. Yeah, you know, this is where we're at. So I'll resume the meeting, and thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. Any commissioners have any questions of the applicant? Okay.
You know, Steve did bring up the topic of the letters, and I was wondering if we could see those again like we did the first time.
Yes,
Do we do as a comment,
Yeah.
or?
Whichever you would prefer. I can either pull those up during our public comment portion, or if you'd like to review those now.
It doesn't matter to me.
Let's go ahead and review them now then.
Okay, perfect. So let's get to Planning Commission. So here I am sharing my screen now, and now we are under rezone 2019-0011. So we have public comment number 1 here. This one was received, and I believe, Commissioner Nelson, this was the letter you might have been thinking of. That was from Rebecca Houston stating that they oppose any rezoning of their property and concern about property values being affected and environmental issues that could arise. So that was one of the comment letters. And then if we go to the second comment letter, this item, it has, it has just this is the cover page, and then we'll go down here. And this is just comments from Mr. Paul Gordon related to the site. And I believe these have been posted for a number of days now. So the commissioners, you've probably had a chance to look at these at this point. So then let's move on to public comment number 3. This public comment letter is from Everett and Ireline Holbrook. This is voicing objection to the Cannabis Accommodation District. And it looks like this was received on Monday. That's also attached to the item. Then the 4th comment letter attached here is from a Denise Doring, and I apologize if I butchered that name, which is also opposition to the Cannabis Accommodation District, again, also received on Monday of this week. And then the 5th comment letter, this was received overnight here. This is a longer comment letter. It's about 6 pages, it appears here. And I have to scroll down here to find who it's signed by. So this is from Mike, looks like that says Snyder and Leslie Snyder, which had some comments, and it appears that they're starting off by stating that they do not support this rezoning request. So that is all of the public comments that we have, and these are all posted and available on our website.
So I'm wondering if Steve was able to, he expressed an interest in perhaps commenting on these letters, and I don't know if he was able to see them or not.
Yeah, I didn't read the letters, but I can comment on the 2 people that did, the Houston and Snyder. Houston is behind me. When I approached her with this, they were opposed because it would have thrown them under the bus, basically. So it's not like the smell is going to disturb them or anything like that. I don't want to talk about other people's business, but that's why she was having an issue with that. We had some issues at one point because I was getting all my licensing and everything else, and I was talking to them about it, and it didn't work out for them. Mike across the street, I've known them, they've been here as long as I have. There are personal issues. I don't know what the letter says. It might go on something about background stuff and everything else. Of course, I've gone through all the background stuff that I need, whatever my past has been. It doesn't have anything to do with this rezoning. But Mike has been a real verbal and a real bad neighbor, using that center finger a lot with me, and I have letters from friends who have watched him be, a bad neighbor. We'll just put it that way. He's got a personal issue, and it really doesn't have to do with this rezoning. His house is across the street, and his house is in the middle of an acre property. So he's halfway across that. My garden is on the back side of my property with all the proper zoning and 50 feet and all that, and 100 feet from all residences and all that. I expected Mike that he was probably going to try to oppose this in any way he could, because he would like to see me fail. And that is the reality of that neighbor. He actually ran another neighbor off that was trying to have his kids do some stuff together, and they tried to get me involved in that. Of course I wouldn't, and there was yelling and screaming across the streets, and it was horrible. And then those people told me, they were friends of mine, they moved because he was kind of not a good neighbor. So that's all I have to say about those two. The other ones I don't know. I know that I'm far enough away from everybody that there shouldn't be any smell issues. I know that we have in this area, we have an asphalt plant that goes off sometime and almost hurts your eyes when that thing's going off. So I can't imagine the smell is gonna, affect anybody if we are all living with stuff like that. But anyway, it does. I don't know what they've said, but so that's what I wanted to comment about with those two in particular, because they are direct neighbors, even though one of them is across the street. And so that's what I have to say. Thank you.
I'm not sure if any of the commissioners, I know the letter that Mr. Thatcher is referring to from Michael Snyder, we did not have access to that before, and according to staff, it's about 6 pages. I'm not sure if the commissioners wish to read that and take some time to read it and then come back or not. What are your wishes? Okay, Diana, you're muted.
I had one question. Were all the letters opposed?
No.
Hello, this
There were
is
2 letters in favor in our packet.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, the ones that we just.
Yeah, 2 were in favor in our packet, and I believe there are 1, 2, 3, 4 opposed.
Okay.
Can I intervene here for a second? So like I said, there was also people in the neighborhood that have signed the document to say that they wanted to be 3 in particular, that wanted to be part of the cannabis district, but for reasons, for instance, one of them, it was the daughter of the owner. Her mother owned the property. Her mother passed. She took control of the property, but the property was still in her mom's name, so she could not actually sign for it until she went through the process of putting the property in her name. And the other one is a catty corner right next to Mike, on the other side of Mike on the corner there. They signed a paper to be part of the accommodation district, but they weren't connected, so we couldn't put them in the map, basically. So my neighbors all the way around me, everybody is for this, except for the 2 letters that nobody else is even close by, other than the 2 letters that you got from Houston and Snyder.
If I may, through the chair. This is Siobhan Holmes. I wanted to give a little additional background information. The configuration of the accommodation district evolved after the initial application was submitted, and in each iteration of the district, the applicant provided at least 80% of approval. What he was describing was the sort of like site-specific situations that precluded property owners from signing. And there were quite a few of them. And this is why we landed on this final configuration. So staff just wanted to let the commission know that the district itself originally was one shape with several letters of support. Finally, we are here looking at what we'd like for the proposal today with 83% approval rate. That has been true throughout the process, regardless of the iteration. So staff just wanted to give the commission a little more background. The applicant really did seek out approval from as many property owners in the entire neighborhood. And so staff just wanted to make sure the commission was aware of that.
If I can intervene again. One of the properties at the end they did not sign a paper of approval, but they were planning on selling their property, and one of the people in the district was looking to buy that property, and that's an ongoing process. As far as the letters and the newspaper stuff that went out for all the adjoining properties around, I've heard from neighbors that have seen me. They were happy with it, and they haven't sent any letters in, but I got stopped because my name was there, and they were they were saying that we support it, but they're just not sending in letters. So there's a lot. It actually got out there well beyond where the district is. I do know that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, any other questions or comments for the applicant? Okay, seeing none, then we'll go on to open the public hearing.
Okay.
So this is the point where we will address any telecomments that have been submitted, that have submitted their form and are waiting on the line. The clerk will read the list in order and call the next speaker. When called to speak, please state your name for the record. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per person. Speakers are asked to please address their comments to the meeting chair and to refrain from using profanity or engaging in conversation with members of the audience or staff. Do we have any public comments?
We have no request to provide telecomment. And then as I showed the commission, we had the 2 letters that were in your packets and then the 4 additional letters that are attached on our website as well.
Okay, thank you. Then I believe we can close the public hearing and have discussion with commission members, and we still have the applicant online if you have questions for him. Any comments or questions from commissioners?
I guess I should comment. A great deal of the, that's not entirely true. I see streets around some of the area, but I also see adjacent neighbors that are going to be subject to the setback or the reduction of setback. So it's still a concern of mine.
So Greg, would you be in favor of the same motion as last time?
Yes.
I'll let other people comment too.
I'm sorry, Madeline, what was that?
I just asked if he was feeling the same about the setback, the possibility that the setbacks could be reduced around the perimeter, and if we were at the same place we were with the last item.
Okay, and Diana, I don't know if you made a comment or not. I'm sorry, I couldn't
I
tell.
didn't, but seeing that Commissioner Nelson is in the same place, and I understand why, right? I mean, the questions. I think maybe there needs to be a motion instead of belaboring the repeat. We should probably, and I'm not sure where you are, Chair Ogle, but maybe we need to pass this to the Board of Supervisors rather than going back and forth, because we're not going to get a majority vote, a quorum.
And as long as our record is clear that our concern is with the possibility of reduced setbacks around the perimeter of the accommodation district or the overlay district or whatever we're calling it, I would be comfortable just repeating what we did the last item and just sending it onward.
So Deputy County Counsel Matthew Kudrowski, my only advice would be to make sure that the comments of the commissioners are also being specifically tied to this application and not simply by reference to the last one. So I appreciate the questions to Mr. Nelson about his concerns and how they relate to this application. If commissioners have other concerns to note at this time, that would be appreciated.
Well, I will state my concerns the same as the previous applicant regarding, and I do appreciate the fact that Stephen has obviously gone to a lot of the neighbors and discussed this with them. but there are still neighbors that are not in agreement with this. And those are my concerns, that plus the setback as well. So I'm not sure, Matt, if you wanted to help us with another motion, or if we can use the same as before, or staff, if you can help us out.
I could read a tentative motion if the commission is considering wanting to make a motion to forward this without a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors. So this tentative motion would be the Planning Commission recommends this project rezone R 2019-0011 be moved to the Board of Supervisors without the recommendation of the Planning Commission, and direct staff to provide a summary of today's proceedings and staff report to the Board of Supervisors.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I can make that motion.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
So that was a motion by Nelson, a second by Madeline Holtkamp.
Can we just have a discussion a minute?
Whoa.
Since we have
Yes.
a motion.
Yes.
Yeah,
go
you can
ahead,
discuss
Diana.
on
Yes.
motion.
Why we are moving this to the Board of Supes, I do want some information about the perimeter setbacks as an issue to be looked at. And I don't know how to do that, whether that's an addenda to our motion or whatever, but if we just pass this motion without a definition of what Madeline was saying, yeah, and I think Greg, it was, I mean, and the perimeter setback, and I think Marilyn, yours is a different issue. Somewhere, are they gonna get this in our minutes, or are we gonna highlight that so that they understand why we're doing what we're doing?
Yes, they will. Oh, thank you, Matt. Go ahead.
Deputy County Counsel Matthew Kudrowski, that's the reason we looked at the wording of that motion from previously, and that motion specifically refers to staff providing a summary of the concerns of the Planning Commission to the Board of Supervisors. So the board report will have that breakdown, ideally draft minutes as well, but really it'll be describing those concerns to the board as terms of, without the recommendation, but noting the discussion. And that's why I wanted to have that similar recitation of concerns for this application, and not simply be looking to what the discussion was the last go around. I think the record is clear by the comments made by commissioners, in particular Commissioner Nelson, that this concern regarding internal versus external setbacks is one that is causing the most amount of consternation amongst the commission.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So we do have a motion and a second. With no other discussion, we'll have a roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Holtkamp,
Yes.
Commissioner Nelson,
Yes.
Commissioner Wiedemann,
Yes.
Chair Ogle.
Oh, Marilyn,
Yes.
thank you. So that motion carries unanimously. So this item is going to be forwarded to the Board of Supervisors without a recommendation of the Planning Commission, but just to reiterate that staff will be preparing a memorandum that summarizes the proceedings of today's meeting. And if available, we will also be including the minutes from today's meeting as well.
And we'll get copies of that. We'll get CC.
We can certainly notify you of where the documents are posted when it's scheduled for a Board of Supervisors item. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you all for getting through that. I believe we're now on to agenda item number 7, matters from staff. Do we have any matters from staff?
We have no matters from staff today, but as always, we are available for any questions that you may have.
I would just like to comment and thank Siobhan for a detailed description of the background. It helped me a lot. Thank you.
Definitely.
I think all of us, all four of us, I know how much work you must have gone through, and with your background, Siobhan, I really appreciate all the input you've given us. Thank you very much. Matters from commission. Any commissioners have any items? Okay, I guess my only question would be, do you know yet, Julia, if we will be having a meeting on the 20th?
At this time, we have no items scheduled for the 20th. So since we have no continued items from today, we will not be holding a meeting on August 20th.
Okay, the only continued item, which I would hope we wouldn't just meet for this, would be the matter of the minutes that apparently we're not going to be approving today.
Yes, I think we'll probably move those to an agenda in September, and that's no problem. We just need to make sure that they're posted to the website so the public could review them as well before the meeting, which is just the one piece that was missing in for these minutes in this instance.
So would that be September 10th?
Yes, it would.
Thank you.
Was it?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I apologize. It's going to be September 3rd and September 17th. I apologize. That's the week. September's a weird month because we have a Monday. It starts on a Tuesday and we got a Monday holiday right after.
Okay, so we're looking at September 3rd and September 17th.
Yes.
Okay. And we will not have approval of minutes at this time, so I'll ask for a motion of adjournment.
I make a motion to adjourn.
I'll
I
second.
second.
I'll third it.
All right. Thank you
All right.
very
Thank you.
much. Yeah,
Thank you all
done.
for all your work.
We will see you in September. And feel free to contact us if anything comes up in the interim.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy trails.